The biggest thing I'm working on, especially as we move towards the $25 an hour that I know is coming, we're going to go to a key lock system. So we will not have employees in the building in the opening hours and in the late evening hours. And you will use a key card to get in and access the building. And all that said, we'll probably reduce our total employees by 50%.
The Small Business Rundown is the official podcast of the National Federation of Independent Business, the member-driven voice of small business. NFIB and our members advocate to keep America's small businesses strong and independent in Washington, D.C., all 50 states, and the nation's courts.
Welcome to the Small Business Rundown, a bi-weekly podcast with information on independent businesses' victories and challenges in Washington, D.C. and state capitals. I'm Adam Temple, NFIB Senior Vice President of Advocacy. Government-mandated wage increases can be a major concern for small businesses as they seek to operate their business, hire, and keep great employees. Joining me today to discuss the impact of minimum wage hike mandates is NFIB member Larry Fuqua, owner of Everyday Fitness in Redding, California, along with NFIB's California State Director John Kabateck and Vice President of NFIB State Government Relations Tim Goodrich. Larry, John, Tim, thanks for joining me today to discuss this issue that's top of mind not only in California, but for small business owners across the country.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
John, let's start by looking at the issue from a state level. Can you give me a bit of background on the minimum wage issue as it relates to California and its current status?
Absolutely, Adam. Happy to do so, and great to be here, and so excited to have our wonderful member, Larry Fuqua, here joining us as well to share his personal story. Those are always the most compelling. So grateful that you're here, Larry. Thank you. But yeah, it's interesting. You know, of course, I think small business owners are kind of looking at a whole panoply of minimum wages as you look at kind of local, state, and federal, especially here in California. And that problem just doesn't go away. And just to give listeners a little bit of a perspective, the current federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. And federal law allows states to then set their own higher but never lower minimum wage rates. Here in California, it's currently $16 an hour, which is the second highest of all states in the nation. Washington State, by the way, is the first with $16.28. You know, taking things a little further, California also allows localities, local communities and cities to set their own minimum wages. For example, West Hollywood is currently $19.08 an hour, which, by the way, is the highest local minimum wage in the nation. And that's actually been proposed to take it up to $19.61. But they're delaying that. The city council is delaying that until next year because they already realize the impact. San Francisco's is at $18.07 an hour, and Mountain View's is at $18.75 an hour, to highlight a few. And it's believed that this issue can be used politically to score points with campaign backers. You know, industry-specific minimum wage rates right now, Adam, are a really big thing that are happening, that big labor is really pushing hard. And they're trying to kind of crawl through the window with those. And they've done so already in a few capacities. We've seen the Governor Newsom, sign minimum wage increases for the fast food franchise industry just in this past year, and healthcare facilities, to name a few. But what have we seen in the wake of that? We've seen a real disaster. You know, we've seen the fast food franchise increase. A minimum wage has led to massive closures of fast food franchises. In fact, just so you know, we've seen fast food restaurants cut about 9,500 jobs just in this past year and raise prices by on average about 8%. But we see the loss of jobs, unfortunately, for teens and young adults who are looking for that first entry-level great experience in a fast food restaurant or someplace in a hospitality. And then on the healthcare facilities, in minimum wage increase that has taken it up to $25 an hour. You know, we're seeing that one that's supposed to go, that went into effect starting July 1st of 2024. The governor has even delayed that, Adam, because he realized that there's going to be a big hit to the state budget, which is already deep in the red. So major impact, major closure. But sadly, you're giving a lot of young people no opportunity to pursue a great entry-level job.
Yeah, John, you mentioned some of the impacts on employees and overall in the state. If the minimum wage is increased, what are some of the other impacts that happen to small businesses specifically?
Yeah, great question. You know, well, in a 2021 survey, 74% of NFIB members said that a minimum wage increase up to $15 an hour, that time, phased in over the 5-year period, would have a hugely negative impact on their small businesses. 58% said they'd be decreasing the number of employees, 87% would raise prices. And the fast food industry, as I mentioned, was compelled to pay employees a $20 minimum wage as of April 1st of 2024. And as I mentioned, we've seen horribly terrible fallout for those businesses and the workers. Healthcare facilities, as I mentioned, are going to be forced to pay some of their employees $21 an hour starting July 1st of 24. And then that will go to $23 per hour July 1st, 2026, and then $25 per hour on July 1st, 2028. And it's important to point out with this, Adam, that on the healthcare facilities, these are not just healthcare professionals and healthcare workers, that the people who fall under this minimum wage increase, this $25 minimum wage increase, are small businesses, janitors, gift shop employees, cafeteria workers, all these people that, I think our policymakers, whether they knew it or not, now are realizing that there's a huge fallout. And then we have something also finally called compaction. And this is a word that really is important to point out because it's that ripple effect. It really squeezes businesses out and it compounds this problem of young people not being able to get into the workforce. What compaction is basically when you raise that minimum wage on that junior level employee, suddenly you're getting that up to a level of an assistant manager in a restaurant, right? Now that assistant manager is going to the boss and saying, hey, this person is now surpassing my wage. I need a raise. And now that when that person gets the raise, there's pressure on the employer to now give the general manager a raise, and so on and so on. And you see this ripple effect that now squeezes a small business owner out of business. So a lot of ill effects of this that I don't think our policymakers knew, or certainly if they were kowtowing to big labor, they did know. And unfortunately, we're seeing the fallout.
Larry, before you help us put that into perspective, can you tell us a little bit more about your small business in California?
Sure. Thanks, Adam. Our business is Everyday Fitness and Training, and we're located in Redding, California, which is about 70 miles from the southern Oregon border. So we're pretty far. We're about 180 miles north of Sacramento. We have a 21,000 square foot facility. It used to be a grocery store, and our membership base runs between about 2,500 and 2,700 members. We have 17 employees. We run 18 hours a day. We're not open 24 hours a day yet, but that's something that we're looking at to be able to offset some of the wage increases.
Right. And like John talked about, and you just mentioned, the wage increases have a massive impact on small businesses. How has the minimum wage and the increase in it impacted yours specifically?
Well, for my business, every dollar an hour increase is worth about $12,000 in net costs to the bottom line. So for me, since 2019, we've pretty much erased all the profit, but we've had to increase membership rates. We've done that by, running specials and attracting all kinds of different groups, but it's been extremely difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the promotions, but what changes have you considered or implemented because of increases to the minimum wage just to maintain your business?
Well, we've made a lot of changes. So for starters, we no longer hire that entry level employee. We cannot afford to train somebody for their first job, and we don't hire many part-time people anymore. So most of the people we hire, they have to do dual roles. We didn't used to have that in the past. The other thing that we've done is we're working with an AI company to have an AI system answering our telephones. I currently have staff at the building working our front desk. If you called our building after we have the AI, you won't talk to a human. Your phone will be answered, and then you'll be routed to a department. The biggest thing I'm working on, especially as we move towards the $25 an hour that I know is coming, we're going to go to a key lock system. So we will not have employees in the building in the opening hours and in the late evening hours. And you will use a key card to get in and access the building. And all that said, we'll probably reduce our total employees by 50%.
Wow, that's staggering. John, NFIB is a member of a coalition in California. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
I think, first of all, it's important to point out that there has been a continued effort by an investor in California, a progressive investor, to raise the minimum wage. I think we're finding amongst labor and some who really haven't been in the trenches with small business that don't understand the metrics or the math, the impact this will have. And a continued push that, as I said, a $16 per hour minimum wage just isn't high enough. So there's a continued push. And what has qualified for the ballot this year is a measure an initiative that would actually raise the California's statewide minimum wage to $18 an hour. progressively through the year 2026. But, we have joined a coalition. Obviously, when this first came to light, we asked our members, as we always do. The wonderful thing about NFIB is our members tell us and dictate for us what's important and what we should do. And we ran that member ballot out to our NFIB members. And of our responding members, a whopping 92.65% of our California members responding to that said, absolutely not. This will devastate my business. And so NFIB got in the fight. In fact, we have been opposing this initiative, and we're part of a coalition that's made up of the California Business Roundtable. We've got other businesses. There's certainly others that are going to be part of this, ethnic chambers of commerce, local chambers. But NFIB is going to for sure be on the forefront of this, as we have fought against the fast food minimum wage increase. We've fought against the healthcare minimum wage increase, and we have because this hurts. And because of whom it represents, the small business owners of the state, NFIB's arguments opposing these minimum wage increases were the most considered and respected. And we're confident through November, we're really going to be that defining voice, people like Larry and others, to really say, please, please stop the pain, push the pause button. You're seeing the ill effects of small businesses still crawling out of the COVID hole. And so we've been very proud to be a part of that coalition, and we're going to be fighting fiercely. And I'm confident that we'll defeat this. The voters are going to see through this.
All right. John, you heard Larry talk about some of the adjustments he's had to make to his business from the standpoint of hours and employment and things like that. What are the adjustments you've seen small businesses across California have to make to compete with the different minimum wages?
Yeah, well, and we're actually seeing this fallout already. As I mentioned, kind of at the local level, we for example, with West Hollywood, which number one has delayed an increase of from current $19.08 an hour to $19.61 an hour. They're delaying that, first of all, until January of 2025, because they realize that the businesses are suffering. And how much are they suffering? Well, they have seen, since this minimum wage increase has gone into effect, they've seen a 39% reduction just in West Hollywood workforce. So close to 40% of people being laid off and not finding jobs. So we're seeing people laid off. We're seeing staff cuts. And as I said, we've also seen this at small businesses, but we're also seeing layoffs across the board. California fast food franchises, Adam, have cut close to 10,000 jobs. Pizza Hut and Roundtable have laid off nearly 1,300 delivery drivers in California. And then El Pollo Loco, which has actually cut workers' hours by about 10%. And Jack in the Box are increasing kiosks and robotics. We're seeing a lot more of the robotics, as I said. But we're also seeing price increases. We're seeing food prices are going up. Small business owners, our members, are finding that is happening. We're seeing an average of about 8%. Chipotle has increased their prices since the fast food increase by 7.5%. Starbucks at 15%. But just the average small business owners are finding at least 8 to 10% increases. They're scaling back hours. They're scaling back worker benefits and shifts. As I said, they're shifting to robots. We are becoming unfortunately the Terminator society, thanks to big labor. And then the worst of all is we're seeing these small business owners who had this great dream shutting their doors and shutting them forever or relocating elsewhere.
Tim, from a nationwide perspective, why do small business owners in other states care about what's going on in California?
Well, yeah, from a small business perspective, all bad ideas really originate in three places: Sacramento, Albany, New York, and Boston, Massachusetts. The real concern with California, fifth largest economy in the world. So what happens in California can have a real impact, not just nationally, but globally. And as California continues to raise its minimum wage, that really sets the target for other states to raise their minimum wage as well. So what happens in any of those three capitals really reverberates around to other capitals. But Sacramento, that fifth largest economy, is very powerful.
And is it happening? What are the trends in state minimum wage?
Well, I'd like to be more optimistic about what's happening out there, Adam. But, this year alone, 24 states have raised their minimum wage due to schedule increases and inflation targets tied to the minimum wage. Over the last 20 years, there have been a number of ballot questions, roughly 26, and 93% of those ballot questions have been approved, with only 2 or 8% being rejected. So a lot of work to be done on that front. Big labor really sees an opportunity with these citizen initiative ballots and have been successful. Most concerning, I think, about what's happening in California right now is just what John has been talking about with this picking of winners and losers between the industry, healthcare, fast food. We've not seen this before. And if it's successful in California, it's no doubt going to spread to the Midwest, the Northeast, and potentially other parts of the country where they can put ballot proposals on for, in red states.
Tim, is there room for optimism elsewhere? Are there any states that have handled the minimum wage in an effective way that maybe should be looked at as an example?
Yeah, there's actually several. There's roughly, I believe, 20 states that are pegged to the federal minimum wage. And, there are 4 that really kind of stick out in my mind: Indiana, Texas, Utah, and even New Hampshire up in New England. They have all stuck to the minimum wage. And at least 3 of those 4, Indiana, Texas, and Utah, are continued to be seen as top economies for state economies by different organizations that look at what are the best business environments among the states. And while New Hampshire still has some work to do, it is by far the best economy in the Northeast.
What about some of the other states? Can you discuss the proposed minimum wage ballot measures that are on the various ballots in 2024?
Sure, there's several. Some are certified, meaning that they definitely will be on the ballot. Alaska is looking to increase theirs to $15 an hour by 2027. Of course, we've been talking about California raising it up to $18 an hour. Oklahoma, again, a place that you would not expect to be looking there to raise their minimum wage, has a ballot proposal that would raise it to $15 an hour. Now, think about that for a second. Oklahoma doesn't have nearly the labor cost of a California. $15 an hour in a state like Oklahoma, that's a lot of labor costs there. Michigan has one that's not been certified that would move it up to 15. So we'll wait and see if that gets on the ballot, as well as Missouri at $13.75 and Arizona at $18 per hour. Those are both waiting certification. For our listeners, that means that it hasn't been approved yet by a state agency to be on the ballot, and we're waiting a ruling on those states as we go forward.
Thanks, Tim. And Larry, before we go, I know you probably have plenty of things to do, but I'm just curious, what made you decide to get into the small business community? Why do you own a small business in California?
Well, it's a long story, but the short version is I wanted to do something for the community. I moved to Redding. I was born and raised in Sacramento, worked in the Bay Area. I worked for a large transportation company for 30 years, retired. And I wanted to do something in the health industry. I was an athlete in college. So a gym seemed like the right thing to do. And we've been here for 15 years. We're in the community. We're serving the community. We're leading a lot of the initiatives. I just got appointed to the Health and Human Services Board for Shasta County. So we want to continue to try and make things better for the community here in Redding and then beyond. But that was kind of the driving goal. I probably should have retired, but I couldn't do that. I don't know. It's not in my DNA, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you didn't. You're clearly impacted, which makes you interested in this topic. What would you tell other small business owners that are also concerned about this issue?
I would just tell people they just need to be creative as they possibly can be. Working for the company I work for, it was FedEx. We watched every category, every dollar, and you just need to have a great handle on your business. You need to know where your money's going, and you need to be able to make adjustments and not get stuck into a rut. It's not an easy business. It's not easy for any business. I mean, the gym business is difficult, but all businesses are difficult. So I would just say you got to stay on top of it.
And what would you tell a lawmaker if they jumped on this call right now? What would you talk to them about the minimum wage?
My first thing I would ask them is, do they recognize that it's driving up costs in every other area, but nobody's getting ahead? In my estimation, the only people that are making out on minimum wage is the taxes that we send to the state. I would say let's let the market dictate what those wages should be. I can't give people an increase anymore because the state already takes it out of my hands and does $1 an hour increase on $16. It's a 6.25% increase. That's probably what I would have given one of my best employees for the year. I don't have the opportunity to even do that. So everybody gets the same amount. Everybody gets treated the same. And I don't think that is really what makes a business successful.
I think that's a good place to leave it. But before we go, is there anything else open to all of you? Anything else you'd like to add?
Adam, I would just add that, members, whatever state they're in, need to be active. They may be small, but they have a large voice, and that's their customers that they work with every day, their employees as well. And really talk to customers, employees about the impact of the minimum wage on their business and what it means. I think everybody would like to see folks make a good wage, and small business owners pay what they can pay to keep their employees. And they're not trying to keep the wages down. It's what they can afford. And I think explaining that to their members and their employees is vitally important.
Yeah, and Adam, I would add also, we strongly recommend that California members and anybody else who's interested is really mobilizing around this November ballot issue here in California, this very dangerous minimum wage increase up to $18 an hour. Get involved. I would encourage people to contact us at NFIB.com and go to the California page, or contact us here in California. We'll help get you involved in that coalition and that effort. But and it does have a number. It is Proposition 32. So encourage everybody, your neighbors, your friends, your aunts, your uncles, your gardeners, to get out and vote no on Prop 32, which is the minimum wage increase. And then the only other thing I would like to mention is, which is really exciting, is that NFIB has a survey that we have for NFIB members, for small business owners to complete, to tell their stories, to get involved, tell us how the minimum wage is impacting them. So we do encourage our members to check out the voter voice survey that they will get, and that they can access, and complete that. That's going to help us know how this impacts you.
Excellent. It's not a pleasant issue, but it's a serious issue. And I really appreciate you guys, Larry, John, and Tim, for joining us today to talk about it.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Adam. Glad to be here.
Larry here, representing the fitness world. I just encourage listeners to exercise their will to be involved and show your political muscle.
All right. Thanks, guys. To support the fight to stop government-mandated wage hikes, if you're a small business owner, please take a look at the link in today's show notes to share your story about how minimum wage increases impact your business and what your plans are for the future. Our next episode premieres on Thursday, August 22nd. If there's anything you'd like us to cover in an upcoming episode, please send us an email at podcast@nfib.org. And now I want to thank you, the listeners, for joining us on today's Small Business Rundown. We'll be back every 2 weeks bringing you news and analysis from Washington, D.C. and state capitals so that you, whether you're a small business owner or a supporter of one, can continue to blaze a trail.
The Small Business Rundown is brought to you by NFIB, the voice of small business. You can find us at nfib.com and on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.